Fairly standstill then, Colin? Busy as ever? How are things as we're catching up?
Very busy at the moment. Very, it's all very hard work, but all very rewarding nonetheless. When you manage to get the time to achieve the objectives you've put out there.
And I suppose you don't get a great deal of time to reflect, really, because it's always on to the next project, the next thing to tick off.
You always reflect on weekends if you have no good performances, and so you sit there looking at film and wishing we'd have done things differently. But that's everybody does that. Everybody who supports the football club would do that, I'm sure. Everybody's weekend's ruined when we don't get a good result, and so I'm no different to any supporter. I must say that on Saturday particularly the supporters were absolutely fantastic as well. Their general support for the team and their understanding and their patience was tremendous. Unfortunately that wasn't rewarded, but I really was proud of the fans on Saturday. The whole occasion was amazing. I thought we presented the club particularly well with our tribute to Armistice Day, and I think that and that carried on through the day. Unfortunately didn't quite get through to 5 o'clock.
We'll talk about the sort of on the pitch football side of things, but you mentioned that fan support and atmosphere. Are you generally finding that, compared to some of the catch-ups we've had over the last 12 months, that you are finding more pulling in the right, not so much supporters on the terrace, but as a general collective?
You only ever hear about the people who are disgruntled, but I'm so pleased. 2 or 3 people, one lady in particular was fantastic on Saturday. She'd realised that we'd had a tough week for one reason or another, but she came up and just said, listen, keep doing what you're doing, we're all behind you, and you're doing a good job, and those kind of comments really keep you going, because at times you're thinking, what the heck am I doing this for?
We've had that conversation in terms of you thinking that. I mean, do those head scratching moments become less and less when you start to see things come to fruition?
Now I think that we've got to focus on doing what we do, and the plans that we've got for the future are obviously we've got to work towards, but they're in the future, and we've got to take care of the present. And the present is we've got to put a team on the pitch that wins football matches, that gives us a lot of pleasure and a lot of pride, and that's what we're looking to do.
You can see many similarities to not so much person to person to the squad compared to last season in terms of how we play, scoring goals, that attacking play. Do you think sometimes the difference can sometimes be a little bit of luck, a little bit of naivety? Because the margins are fine, aren't they?
You make your own luck. Naivety is a great word. I think that was certainly the problem at Fylde, and that was a body blow for me personally. But that was naive, and we've addressed it, and that's the point. I'm sure the fans are fed up of keep hearing that we're all inexperienced and we're young and we're learning. But the fact is that you make mistakes. If you make the same mistakes again, that's suicide. If you don't make the same mistakes, then it's good experience, and that's what we're looking to get good experience into young players and a young management group. And although I became a granddad this week, I'd have to say a young chairman as well, with regards to experience in the role. So we have to use those bad experiences to learn and make sure you don't make the same mistakes again.
Looking at the squad sort of June, July time compared to now, obviously the likes of James O'Connor, Jimmy O'Connor, James Pearson, Jan Klukowski coming in hopefully before the weekend, you can see that sort of moulding of that squad now.
Yeah, what we had to do was to build a team that we felt was better than last year's, and it's taken us a long time, and we've made some mistakes, and I've got on record about the errors that we made in our need to fill spaces within the squad. We think now that the squad's getting there. We think that the squad now is starting to look like a team that, in the image of John Eustace, the manager, not John Eustace the player. Otherwise, there'd be yellow cards and red cards every week. But we're getting there, and the experience that we're bringing in is invaluable. And people don't see it on a daily basis, but they're more than welcome to. That the work that goes on at the training ground and the influence that these lads have. James Pearson is probably 24 going on 44 in his experience and knowledge, and the way that he benefits the people around him. James O'Connor's a great character and a great leader, and these things are now rubbing off and reflecting well within the group, and very good things about the lad we're bringing in from Torquay, Klukowski. I hope I've got his name right, but I spoke to Kev Nicholson today about him. He said he's another great type who's got great experience, but he's prepared to share that experience, and that's what we need, and therefore we can help the group grow up quicker and learn quicker. Because at the moment, some of the some of the results are fantastic, and then we shoot ourselves in the foot, and we need to make sure that we finish the season very, very strongly and see where that takes us. You'd argue that the top two have got a great strength about them. They've seemed to have hoovered up every experienced player there is, because that's what they need to go and play the way that they play and do what they do. But their budgets are enormous, and they are absolutely enormous. So you might argue that they're away. We'll be trying to close the gap, but if they are away, they're away, and good luck to them. We'll meet one of them in the playoffs if that's where we end up. We'll be doing whatever we can to close the gap, but we won't be, and we can't spend the kind of money that they're spending. And there's the disparity in the league. There's 3 or 4 teams as well as them spending far, far more than we can afford to spend.
Talk about that supporter frustration in terms of, I don't know, maybe the likes of Curzon, Ashton, Boston, and Spennymoor, and Darlington at the weekend, in terms of conceding late and dropping points and all those things. But I felt the manager particularly really reflected that in his own frustrations at the weekend. And I guess what I'm getting at is that fans are frustrated and disappointed, but so are everybody else.
Everybody is, and the fact of the matter is, the only people who can put it right are the people who are paid to put it right, players and staff, and that's what we'll be looking to do. Don't think that we haven't recognised the same frailties that everybody else has seen we have. Don't think that we're not trying to put that right. We are, and we're not that stubborn in our way that no, we're not. We're going to do it our way and forget everybody else. We know what we need to do, and there are changes happening, and we feel that we will be more difficult to break down, and hopefully we'll develop a game management which we've been lacking. Those goals that we conceded late in games were absolutely avoidable. There's no question about it, and even though in some games we should have gone on and made the scoreline more comfortable, therefore it doesn't really matter if the opposition score. The fact is that sometimes you don't take those chances, and you need still to be as professional as you can be to make sure that you don't give the opposition a sniff of getting a result when they haven't had a sniff of getting a result all day. And that's what we need to learn. And you could throw into the mix there the Blythe game as well, which we won, but by the skin of our teeth, and we need to be learning our lessons, and it's lessons that we need to learn not just for this season but for every season going forward, and every player, whether they're with us or not, and every manager and every coach, whether they're with us or not, have to learn those lessons.
And as painful as it is, it's almost unavoidable, I suppose, in the sense that the entire group, in order to improve in that regard, you have to learn on the job, don't you, really? Which
it is, and that's a disappointment. You'd argue that as coaches and as people, and myself included, we've been through these experiences, therefore you impart that experience onto others and hope they take it in, because it's not as if they're not told. They are told. But when you get caught up in the heat of battle, and when you start to feel the pressure that we're only winning by 1 goal here and any mistake could be costly, you're more likely to make a mistake, and that's what's been happening. And so really it's a gradual process. It's a painful process, because we should certainly have maybe 10 more points than we have at the moment, which would put us in a very nice position. We don't have that. We can't turn the clock back. We can't go back to the start of the season, and we can't then avoid the mistakes we made with regards to staff and players and everything else. We are where we are, and the only thing we can deal with is the next game, the next training session, the next meeting, the next whatever. That's the only thing you can affect, and I think the majority of people understand that. But there are a group that seem to, I don't know whether they own a lot of time machines or whatever, but we seem to always be dealing in retrospect, and I don't understand how you can do that in life, let alone football. You can only affect what's in front of you. No one can go back. As I said earlier, the only thing you can do is make sure that the mistakes you made actually add to your experience, rather than cost you your opportunity to work in this industry. And that's pressure on the manager, pressure on the coaches, pressure on everybody involved, because if we keep making these mistakes, then that means that we're not learning, and if we're not learning, we're not getting better. If you stand still in football, you'll be out of work. That's it. That's so we're all working tirelessly to learn, to develop, and to help the club to become better. But I'd rather be Kidderminster Harriers as we are now than Kidderminster Harriers that when I came in right at the start of this, that had no idea of what they were looking to achieve, what they were about. We have that And what we need to do now is to stop making the elementary mistakes that we've been making. That's costing us points. And I assure everybody that's what we're looking to do.
And there are the extra plus point as well, in the fact that I know the management team won't, by their nature, use this as an excuse, but the likes of a Lee Vaughan and a Liam Truslove and even Dan Bradley to a recent extent, we've had that sort of injury luck, but some of those injuries, particularly Braddis for instance, freakish injuries. You can't do a lot about those, can you?
No, you can't, but that's what happens in football, and we have to make provision for it. We went to Stockport with a particularly weakened side and with Jimmy not available through suspension, and we managed that game brilliantly and won the game comfortably.
A bit like Southport, really, wasn't it?
Southport as well, where we went, so people have to stand up when when others are missing. All I can say is that the likes of Varney and Dan Bradley, and Trusty's back now, and we're so pleased with him. For the first time he's been able to get proper work into that rather lithe body of his, we hope that he's now built up a strong resistance and proper muscle groupings, because he's been going through the right work, probably for the first time ever for him. So he should be coming back stronger and fitter than he's ever been. Bradley and Vaughan, they're here for the long haul. That's the point. Just don't get worried about what's happening. Judge us in 3, 4, 5 years. That's what I've said all along. Dan Bradley at the moment think, oh my God, what have we done? We spent that money, he's not playing. Dan Bradley's a top player. We've just been unlucky. But we're all going to have the benefit of seeing Dan Bradley at his best. And he'll be playing a major part in what we do going forward. And he could be as fit as a fiddle from Christmas onwards and help us, as will Varney. We're all dying to see play football, and he's more frustrated than anybody, but he's working his socks off every day to get fit. And if he's not blooming working, he's scouting for us. Although some people thought he was signing for Solihull when he was scouting for us, but that's another matter. But the whole point is that they are absolutely committed to the club. And you ask them about how they regard the club, they will tell you it's probably the best club they've ever been at. It's the best training they've ever seen. It's the best facilities they've ever been involved with. And these things are just hold us in great stead going forward. And it's about going forward. It's about going forward. Everybody's hung up. Yes, your weekend's ruined. Yes, my weekend's ruined. But I can't take my eye off the long game as well. The big picture is, where will we be? What will we be? How will we be in 5 and 10 years' time? And that's what we need to be looking at and thinking. That's the thing that excites me. Not to the point that we will shortchange our supporters and not go out and sign players when we need to. No one can question.
I think that, though, just to put that caveat in there, I think sometimes when you talk about the long-term plan, I think it can be construed as the short term doesn't matter, but it very much does, doesn't it? I think we all know that.
We paid out money for Joe Anside, big money for Dan Bradley. We paid out big money in as much as that we put people on top wages for James Pearson, Jimmy O'Connor. We're bringing Klukowski in. These things don't come cheap. The budget is it's maxed out, to be honest, and so we want this team to win. We're not making cutbacks. When the manager needs something, we go and find it, and we're looking even now to strengthen in January. We know what we'd like to bring in. Do you know what? If it helps us to be successful this season, fantastic. But what it will do is make sure we hit the ground running for the season beyond and seasons beyond that. When this team gets the momentum of really travelling forward, that we've grown up together and we avoid the childish errors that we're making, and they can be called childish because they're not much older than children, the people who are making them, then we will be a force, a major force in this league, in the league above and the league above that. There's no question about it. So that's what we're building towards. Now, I understand impatience in football, and certainly now there's more impatience than ever, but if we look at this another way, if Man United had got rid of Alex Ferguson after a year because he hadn't won anything, after 2 years because he hadn't won anything, after 3 years because he hadn't won anything, where would Man United be now? The fact is that people at Man United thought, this bloke is worthy of the job, we're sticking with him, we're going to be patient. How many babies have been thrown out with the bathwater in football because people make snap decisions because supporters are banging and saying we need change? These are the elementary errors that I've seen for 20 years in the job that I've been in, where people, and then not only that, they compound it. They respond to the pressure from the supporters, then they compound it by appointing someone who the supporters like, right? Supporters, with all due respect, that have probably never been on a football pitch, they've been watching football for years. Well, that's great, but leaders lead, right? I had a great statement the other night after the Challenge Cup final, the Rugby League Challenge Cup final, and the head coach of Leeds, who won, they were screaming at him to be sacked for years, and the statement was, if you listen to supporters, you'll soon become a supporter. I'm not disregarding what our supporters feel, because I feel every bit that they feel.
There's a validity to that.
But at the end of the day, people who are experts in their field need to be trusted and need to understand also and have the courage and the bravery to lead. And no one can throw that at me. I'm not going to go with the flow. I'm not going to make decisions based on popular consensus. I'm making decisions based on experience and knowledge in an industry that is the only industry I've ever worked in. It's the only industry I know. It's the only subject I could do on Mastermind, right? This industry. So trust. If you're not prepared to trust, I understand that. You're entitled to your opinion, but trust.
That doesn't discredit the passion and frustration of
I
supporters,
understand it.
because you need that.
I'm horrible. You know, I just, you know, I'd filed, I didn't know where to go. I just, you know, I know the dogs have bought crash helmets because when I'm coming back on a Saturday night, they don't want to see me. I understand their frustrations. No one else more frustrated than I am, and I'm not any more frustrated than anybody else. We're all frustrated. It's not about how much money you put in or how many people you employ. It's about, we all love this club and we all want this club to do well. Everybody wants to succeed, but the tough decisions are made behind this desk, and the tough decisions at the moment aren't based on relationships, aren't based on destroying people's careers or anything else. The tough decisions are based on, this is the right thing to do. This is the right thing to do. Now, if I start worrying about what other people think with their lack of experience, I'll tell you a story. I was 4 years of age, and the first film I ever saw was Bambi at Lie Odeon. Nobody knew they had an Odeon at Lie. It's now a fruit and veg shop. So I've been watching films all my life, and I love films. Couldn't make one. Couldn't direct one. Couldn't star in one, although most people think I am a good actor. Right? The fact is, I'm there to be entertained, entertain me. If I don't like a film, I'll walk out. Right? Yeah, well, this day and age you can actually write a report on it or whatever. But that's a fact. So, but I will leave the filmmaking to the people who are experts in their field. And in this instance, as much as I understand people's frustrations, it is too easy to go online and vent your spleen, and then whether you regret it or not further down the line is not really an issue, but that is your opinion, that is your thought, and that then generates more problems and more pressure. So I understand all of that, but I can't be led by that. I have to believe passionately in the experience and knowledge that I've got with good people that I know that can help and support me, that we will get this right.
So you would hope that if I'm a supporter that thinks, well, I'm impressed by the long-term vision and I believe that the club will succeed long-term, but why then should I pay my ticket money on the gate for North Ferriby at home next Tuesday because it's the shorter term? That's essentially what we're taking care of, isn't it?
That is their prerogative. I can't do anything to change that. So I'm not going to say that you should or you shouldn't. We all support the club and we all go home elated when we've watched winning football. Not just football that wins matches, winning football. We all go home elated. That was enjoyable. It's the entertainment industry at the end of the day. We've seen enough goals down here. Unfortunately, they've been equally shared out the majority of times. But you go home and you feel elated. You watch football because you want to go through those emotions. So if the emotions are getting the better of you and you don't want to come anymore, I understand that. Please come back when we start winning games. But rather, please stick with us and you understand that, you know, every football supporter, no matter what team they support, wants to win. It doesn't always work out. But we're working our socks off to make sure that our fans are entertained and they can enjoy their weekends. That's what we want to be able to do.
And that's the short term matters as much as the long term.
Short term matters, otherwise why would we do what we're doing? We could have set a team out to survive in this league and, you know, then we go from there. But what do you do then? What does that say to people out there that we don't care? What are we actually trying to build for? We want to compete. You know, there was nearly 1,900 here on Saturday, which was phenomenal turnout there, and in the main it was enjoyable and entertaining, but we were all frustrated at the end of it. Yes, life.
So in that sense, you could put out a team that will be guaranteed to finish bottom of this league, but it doesn't matter because you're busy building a new stadium. That approach doesn't get you a new stadium,
Doesn't
does
get
it?
you a new stadium, but there are people that have actually been through the process that paid more money out than us, that have gone through 2 leagues, that have no idea why they've done it and no idea what they're working towards and no plans and nothing other than what's the next game. And obviously the classic example of that would be Altrincham. Or you could say Worcester City, and you could say a lot of other Herefords. You could say a lot, whereby things have got away from them, and through poor management of debt or just poor management, they're in decline. We're not in decline. The fact is the team is not performing as well as we would like at the moment. But in the main, we're not doing too bad. We'd have been on a decent run, barring the filed result, which was a real shock to us all. We were very naive, but we got turned over by a good forward line, but we actually dominated possession, had as equally as many chances as they did. They just threw 3 or 4 knockout blows, and we allowed them to throw 3 or 4 knockout blows. That's the point. We've got to be brighter and better than that going forward.